Hello, Golden Eagles. Welcome to episode 33 of the Knowledge Nest. We're going to be talking about evaluating sources this week. However, before we leap into that topic, we're going to cover a little bit of news. The last Thursday of this month at noon, we're going to have our book club meeting, and we're going to be discussing the novel Hidden Pictures. And so please check that out. You can get it through ILL. You can get it at the library. I believe we have a few copies. And this is going to be a murder mystery / horror novel, just so you're aware. And so you can get a good head start on the October booked reading challenge. And so that'll be kind of exciting. And maybe we'll be able to get some recommendations from each other at that book club meeting regarding the book and other books like it, so you can read those for the October book reading challenge. So please participate. Thank you for all of you who have come to the book clubs. It's been really exciting, and every month we have more participation in the book club. We also have the trivia challenge that still is happening. Please come in every week. We have a new trivia question, and so please participate in that. Last week we had it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. This week we have a new trivia question. So come on in. I'm not going to tell you what it is because you have to come on in and guess and see the board for yourself. But please come in and participate in that trivia challenge. Another news that was just released today, our Dean of Enrollment Services, Montse Stark-Magana, has been granted a fellowship with the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. And she's going to go to La Academia de Liderazgo, which is a leadership academy that they are providing. And so that's very exciting. So congratulations to our Dean of Enrollment Services, Montse Stark-Magana. And now on to our topic for this week, evaluating sources. Our second or third episode kind of discussed a little bit of fact-checking sources, and that's on this page of the LibGuides. If you go to communication and then fake news, fact-checking, and evaluating sources, there's also some links on the front page of the library website. We can go and see all these materials. You recognize this flyer from the first or second episode. But please go, and here's the predatory journals and publishers list. Please go and review these. We have a lot more videos on fake news, but that was more the fake news. Now we're going to be talking about evaluating sources that aren't necessarily fake news, but may just be biased or not have the best resources and sources that they've evaluated. And so why do you need to evaluate sources? Well, the main thing, apart from misinformation, is bias. There's explicit bias and implicit bias, including confirmation bias, that can be present in a resource. This page is part of the guide to research. And so if you go to view all pages and you go to modules, it's in the second module, evaluating sources. And it reviews bias, misinformation, and disinformation, which is deliberately misleading people. And then this is misinformation, which is misinformation that is incorrect and misleading, and this is deliberately and intentionally wrong. Sometimes these are, it could be misinformation, it could be disinformation. Other times it's blatantly clear which it is, if it's just mistaken, or if it's misinformation, or if it's completely intending to be inaccurate, and that would be the more fake news. We have the Association of College and Research Libraries. A lot of their materials are very helpful in reading that, and we have some of their links on our LibGuides page. But authority is basically that the idea that an author has the ability, the experience, the competence, the knowledge to say something. So you aren't going to get your information about, let's say, medicine from an astrophysicist. You're going to get it from someone who's studied and knows about that particular type of medicine. Simply because someone has learned and experienced in one area does not make them an expert in a lot of other things. It just makes them an expert in that particular field, unless they are a general scientist or a general researcher. But even then, they have general knowledge and they may have specific knowledge about some things, but make sure that the person who you are listening to about a specific topic actually has the authority to look at that topic and analyze it. There are various tests that you can use to evaluate your sources. We're going to go over two of them, the CRAP test and the SIFT method. So there are the aspects of the CRAP test are currency, relevance, the authority thing that we've talked about, accuracy, and the purpose of the information resource. Currency, how recently was it created, or how soon after an event was something created. It doesn't necessarily have to be made this year or 5 years. It can also be currency as to the event taking place. And so simply because something was made this year doesn't make it accurate. It could be made in 1960s if the thing that we're going to be talking about is, the assassination of John F. Kennedy or something like that. You want something perhaps that's a primary source, something that's right there next to the action that has information that was gained. Sometimes mistakes, sometimes biases are useful because they help portray a perspective that some people had in history, and then you can show how that's incorrect or how that changed over time. And so biases in themselves can be useful in information analysis and document analysis. That's mostly for history. You wouldn't want to base your current scientific decisions on something from the 1960s, but you can use a 1960s diary entry to demonstrate how people thought at a certain time, or a newspaper article. And so keep this in mind, the CRAP test, and use it in accordance with your best practices for your field. Relevance. How relevant is the information? This is something that does stand the test of time, even if it is closer to an event. Is it relevant? Does it have the most accurate information and the most accurate analyses of data? Who's the intended audience? Is there a new perspective that it states, or does it rehash something else that is stated elsewhere more clearly? Again, authority and accuracy. Accuracy and relevance are interrelated. Obviously, all of these are, but accuracy and relevance are extremely interrelated. And then the purpose. Why was it created? Is it satire? Is it opinion? Is it propaganda, etc.? And so kind of how I was talking about with currency, yes, is important, but you need to take all of these under consideration. This is not a sequential test. It can be for purposes of learning how to take the test, but you should constantly examine how authority is affected by currency and purpose and etc. Now let's go through the SIFT method. And this has less to do with analyzing one particular resource and more to do with your research process. And this is something that becomes natural. I didn't learn it using this acronym, but the steps that you take on any research journey are the same. And so I really like it to teach other people how to research. You stop. You need to look at the metadata. And as an archivist, this is probably my personal bias. Speaking of bias, but you need to look at the metadata. Where is it from? When was it published? What changes have been made? When was it revised? Investigate the source. Where did it come from? Investigate the author. Investigate whatever they're affiliated with. Find better or maybe different coverage. Go through Wikipedia, look at the sources they used, and look at those sources. I would personally find something that is Wikipedia's second removed source. So not their sources, but things that their sources used as their sources. And then trace those claims. Trace what ideas or thoughts or quotes or data to where it came from. And then look at, again, the metadata of that. Stop and investigate the source for that. So again, like how the CRAP method isn't necessarily a step-by-step process, the SIFT method can be used for each source. And of course, you don't want to be too redundant with this, but in many cases you do. You want to trace back to the original context, the original source. That's what historians do. As a historian, I did that all the time. And especially with newspapers, you want to look at newspaper articles, but you also want to look at the person who wrote it, the people who are featured. What other things did they write? How can these things that they wrote in this context be evaluated in the light of other materials? And that also comes into critical thinking. Again, you can look at our libguides.csi.edu page, fact-checking and evaluating sources. And here's another resource that we created. We used to have another newsletter, little publication, and this was created in 2015. It's 8 years old, but it still has some accuracy today because it's talking about a general topic of evaluating sources. And one of the things that I wanted to point out is the coverage, how thoroughly the publication covers something, and the objectivity. That kind of is covered by the purpose, but objectivity is a word you need to look at. Neutralization, or if there's a bias, what's the justification for this bias? The best sources, in my opinion, are either neutral or they are explicit and clear about what biases they may have. This could be in the form of a disclaimer, or it could be in the form of actual discussion of that bias and that bias's importance in the source itself. Here's a good quality web page, at least in 2015, it has the title. This is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the authority, the currency. It was in 2015 and it's published in 2015. The objectivity, simply facts, accuracy, and the coverage again. And this was created by Steve Pepino and Dave Feralick. It's copyrighted by the CSI Library, and as I am a CSI Library worker, I can use this in this podcast. And so that's various resources and guidelines on evaluating sources. Please reach out to us if you have any more information that you would like to know about evaluating sources. And please, again, use the guide to research. We have hundreds of students over the time that this has been operational that have used this guide, and we love that everybody's using it. We have tens of students. I don't want to say we have 100 students, but we could have 100 students using this guide just in this semester. So please use this. Please feel free to look at all these things, share the information in this guide with other people. Look at the videos, especially that Ross is creating. Ross is creating new videos for the EBSCO interface, so please look at those. And reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns. I've already made 2 adjustments, and also Ross has made 2 adjustments to the guide to research based on your feedback. So please continue with the feedback, and we are anxious to hear from you. Thank you, and have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time here on The Knowledge Nest.